Welcome to Ridgewood Talks. Through this podcast, we will be introducing you to some of the leaders and legends in our village. We'll keep you updated about fascinating local events. We'll dig into the town's hot topics and so much more. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Jeanne Johnson, the founder of Ridgewood Talks and Ridgewood Walks. The goal of these initiatives is to create a kinder, more connected, and more vibrant community. I'm thrilled to be hosting this podcast with my good friend and all-around wonderful guy, Jordan Kaufman. We look forward to meeting with you weekly and hearing your thoughts on who and what you'd like to learn about in our beautiful hometown. For now, be kind, do good, and enjoy this episode. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to Ridgewood Talks. As you know, our goal is to help residents be informed about the important initiatives in Ridgewood. And to accomplish this, we're continuing to have conversations with our village leaders. On this week's episode, we are honored to be joined once again by Ridgewood Village Manager Keith Kazmark. Thanks so much for being here, Keith.
My pleasure, Jeanne.
I am so happy. Last time you were here, I was under the weather, but you and Jordan had a wonderful conversation, so I want to review some of the things that you guys talked about, and then I want to dig in deeper about some of the other things that are going on. First of all, let's talk about the lights at Vets.
So we're really excited about the Veterans Field Lighting Project.
For sure.
Last year, during our capital budget, the Village Council appropriated $700,000 to invest in lighting the soccer fields and the varsity baseball field over at Vets.
Fantastic.
During those discussions, the council wanted to expand the project to also include the varsity softball field to service the girls at Ridgewood High School. And very proud that through the collaboration of the village, a county grant, the Board of Education, and 4 of our sports organizations in town, we were able to put together another $258,000 to be able to fund that second phase of the project.
The generosity in this town never ceases to amaze me. We just had an interview with the Ridgewood Education Foundation and the amount of money that they raise for our schools, and then now you're telling me that the sports clubs raise money for lights. It's incredible. We are so lucky to live in this town. But the thing I like most about that lighting is they're not as noisy as the other things that were up there.
There's a lot of benefits to this project. One, obviously, there are residents who live in and around Veterans Field.
Raise your hand if you live there.
So the directional lighting with the LED
sure.
technology certainly is going to improve quality of life for people who live in and around Vets Field. It's also going to improve safety. The lights that were there were put up in the 80s. So it's been a long time since we've had an upgrade, and the technology that's going to support that is going to provide for better safety of our athletes. And on top of that, we will no longer need the portable lighting the sports organizations were leasing to be able to light different areas along Vets. This new project will light the entire facility.
And from what I understand, they're downlights, so it's not, like you said, it's not intrusive to the housing.
What's incredible is if you go to a field who's equipped with this type of lighting and you stand off of the field with your back to it, you wouldn't even know that the field behind you is lit. And that's the advantage that the residents who live in and around Vets are going to see.
I think that's fantastic. The other hot topic always is now the town garage. I see that it's being pulled up. There's some blue tarps out there. What's going on over there?
Well, when I arrived here in the village back in July of 2023, the council was very specific in the fact that they wanted to tackle these environmental projects on Franklin Avenue. And we were in the process of talking with the previous owner through the court proceedings, the condemnation proceedings that were ongoing on Town Garage, that's 120 Franklin. And we were able to strike a deal with them late summer, early fall. We were able to come to a settlement agreement that the court approved. And just this year, as we turn the calendar, they were in the ground. Prior owner, his professional staff, and his environmental consultants were in the field, and we were able to remove the building itself. And now we're into the environmental piece, where they're digging up the old fuel tanks, the old hydraulic lifts, and I would say within the next 6 weeks, they should be off-site. At that point, we'll have 2 years of the prior owner continuing to test the soil and the groundwater sampling for a period of 2 years. And we'll get quarterly reports on that, and that will help the council make a better informed decision about how that site's going to be redeveloped in the future, whether it's going to be a park or some other type of use. They need that data, and they need the advice and counsel of a licensed site remediation professional to help make an informed decision.
Right. Well, I'm just going to chime in here and tell you what I would like to see put there. Do you mind?
Not at all.
I don't know. I think hydroponic farming is such a great way to get fresh and delicious greens. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Greens Do Good. It's affiliated with the Reed School up in Oakland. They have a warehouse in Hackensack, and all of the students from Reed who are on the spectrum they graduate from Reed, and then they go work at the warehouse at Greens Do Good. I want to have a hydroponic farm here in Ridgewood because we have plenty of special needs people in our community that could walk there, so we wouldn't need a parking lot. We would just need to put up, you could build the warehouse, if you will, with containers from the trucking containers, the shipping containers, put about 3 in a row, paint it really cool, put some trees out there. I think it would be really cool.
Well, the beauty of this is, number one, we have time to decide.
Yes.
And I am sure that we will not be short on ideas, opinions, suggestions from the residents here in Ridgewood as to how they see that property moving forward. Yeah. What's also exciting about that is we're not only seeing the cleanup on the town garage site, but right next door on village property is our North Walnut Street parking lot. There were 9, we assumed that there were 9 underground storage tanks. During the excavation, we found 7. So that was a benefit.
That was helpful,
with the project. But we're also cleaning up that site. So while we have had some commuters who were displaced who park there, we found them other locations. But that too, within the next 6 weeks, we should be wrapped up with that project as well, removing all of those underground fuel tanks and being able to start to remediate that property. And together, being that those 2 properties are joined and then you have Ben and Jerry's on the other corner, the council will be able to really sit down and talk to our professional staff about what's best to go there.
Right. And I think residents can probably put in their suggestions for a hydroponic farm.
And again, there have been a lot of suggestions thrown out there.
Yeah.
I know when the prior council filed the condemnation proceedings with the courts, there was talk about a park.
Yeah.
So, again, I encourage folks who have ideas or thoughts about these properties to reach out to myself, reach out to members of the village council. We're always available by email or phone call.
Right.
Just to share your thoughts and ideas, because at the end of the day, it's your community.
Right. That's right. And you guys work for us. So, and by the way, thank you for all the hard work that you do. We were just talking earlier before we started recording. We had some other guests in the studio, and they were complimenting you too, once again, on having a communications director and the beautiful website, the newsletter that comes out, and just the amount of communication that's coming out of your office right now is just so helpful to residents. So thank you so much for that.
I appreciate that. And listen, I think the hallmark of anything in life is communication.
Totally.
Right? Whether it's relationships, whether it's who you work with, who you work for, whether you're dealing with a constituency. And my staff has been directed from the day I walked in the door that everybody deserves a response. So not only are we doing the mass communication of trying to get out information about what's happening here in the village, events, how village tax money is being spent, but we're also responding to everyday inquiries and questions that the public has. And I think that's hugely important. And as I tell the staff all the time, you're not always going to give them the answer that they want to hear, but they deserve the respect of an answer.
And also just to feel heard that, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to find out what it is and I'll get back to you. Yeah. And that's just courteous.
And courtesy is important. And listen, at the end of the day, we work for the 26,000 people who live in the village of Ridgewood. Right. And when they have a question, they have an inquiry, they have a concern, they deserve a response. Right. And to the best of our ability, we're going to try to meet their needs and meet their ask. We can't always do that. And if we can't, we're going to explain why.
Right. So I understand right now you are not only knee deep, you are neck deep into the budget process.
We are. We checked off budget meeting 3 last night. So
that's a lot of work. I want to learn more about what you're doing with that. And I'm also kind of curious because, I've kind of been involved a little bit. Not involved maybe, but paying attention over the years. And I've always thought, oh, we're broke. We can't do that. Oh, we have no money to do that. But somehow or another, over the last few years, we've been able to find quite a lot of money to do some really major projects. For example, those lights. And I know that it is in collaboration with other organizations. But, so how is it that we're so flush with cash right now, or are we?
Well, I wouldn't describe it as being flush with cash. What I think we need to break it down into is we have multiple budgets that we have to put together each year. The primary budget is the current fund, the general operating budget of the municipality.
And what number is that?
So we don't have numbers yet.
Okay.
We'll be presenting them within the next few weeks. Our intention is to introduce the budget before the council on March 12th.
Okay.
So we're still finalizing end of year 2024, determining where our revenues stand, what our surplus looks like. We met last night. Again, council had some suggestions on areas to add and areas to cut. So we're taking that into account. And Bob Bruni and his staff in our finance office are working on that. Are working on that as we're having this discussion right here. So we'll have more to present in the next few weeks as far as what the impact is going to look like. But one, we have to look at the appropriations cap, which is statutory. We have to look at the tax levy cap, which is statutory. And those initiatives were designed under both the Corzine and Christie administration to contain property taxes. And those laws still exist, those caps still exist, and that is something that Bob and I have to live by as we craft this budget to present to the village council. Beyond that,
just pause 1 second. Sure. I want everyone to know who Bob Bruni is. Just for those.
Bob Bruni's our chief financial officer. He's been with the village since 2016. Vast knowledge. He has an auditing background. Did municipal auditing before he came and served as chief financial officer. So he's a great resource. And again, a budget is a living, breathing document. I said this to the council last night. It's also a set of priorities. So what are our priorities? Well, we have to go to the village council, understand what their priorities are, talk to each department director and understand what they need for the coming year. And that's a process that started probably last September. And we'll run through until we adopt the budget in mid-April.
Right. And so for our listeners and viewers, one of the ways that the village council is able to develop what the priorities are is through you. So there are multiple committees, boards, and commissions that people can get involved in. I think, are you looking for volunteers for any of those boards and commissions right now, or are they all full?
We have some openings. Heather Maylander, our clerk, manages that as far as our appointment list goes. But I encourage people all the time
show up
to fill out a volunteer interest form, file it with Heather's office, because then if an opening does come up, somebody decides to step down because of personal circumstances, they're moving out of town, they simply don't want to serve anymore, then we have a folder to go to, and we can look in that file and make a determination as to who we want to interview. And the council conducts those interviews. Some of them are the full council. Some of them are done by committee of the council. And then they come back with a recommendation to the full council as to who should serve there. And I have to say, one thing about the committees in Ridgewood is it is a major asset to have these volunteers pushing and advocating for the cause that serves their mission. And, for example, Shade Tree. I mean, we've planted on average 200 to 300 trees between the sapling program and then the shade tree budget that we pass each year through the capital budget. And they're constantly pushing to replenish our tree canopy all throughout the village. And they do a great job with that. Parks and Recreation, made it a priority that we needed to provide some shelter and some cover up at Habernickel Park, which is what led to the pavilion that's being put up there now. So
and the barn was dilapidated and dangerous.
I joke with the council all the time. We're in the process of knocking things down. We've knocked down the barn. We've knocked down Town Garage, and the bus station is up next.
Or as Mark Zuckerberg says, move fast and break things. Is that your part of your philosophy?
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
But listen, there are certainly some lingering projects that I'm sure were affected by COVID. And change of leadership, priorities change. But we have a plan. We have a plan, and we're following that plan. We take input from the council. Certainly, our directors are invaluable to deciding what we need to do each day here in the village, and we're working through that. And we're in the process right now. We'll present our capital budget on Thursday. And when you talk about having cash to be able to do some of these projects. It has been tradition in Ridgewood to bond about $7.5 million a year. That's what comes off the
Right.
books. That's what goes on the books. So our auditors are happy because we stay consistent,
Yeah.
and it's slow and steady. But that's how we're able to do some of these larger projects, like the lights at Vets Field,
Right.
some improvements to the water pollution control facility, and we're going to need to start to plan for some of the remediation that's going to need to be done on the Schedler property as well.
Yeah, we should probably step into that. But before we do, I want to review a couple of other things first. The pedestrian tunnel project, that is in full swing. Everybody is engaged in doing what needs to be done. Do you want to expound on that?
Well, I think you'll be happy to know that there's an allocation in our capital budget this year
Yay!
to
I'm
start
so
off
happy.
that project,
Yes.
to start some of the design work, and
Yes.
also, Jeannie, to make sure that we're competitive in any historic grants that we apply for.
Right.
I know the Borough of Park Ridge was successful in securing $350,000, I want to say, from the Bergen County Historical Trust Fund. Doing a similar project, restoration, at the train station. So we're looking to sort of model that. And we're also looking to apply again to the New Jersey Historic Trust.
Right.
Having the Village Council allocate a certain amount of dollars indicates to both of those grant organizations that we have skin in the game,
Right.
that we're committed to this
By
project.
the way, we're shovel ready.
We want to improve that pedestrian walkway underneath the train station. We want to make it safe. We want to make it aesthetically pleasing. And we also want to add the art component, which I know you're a big advocate
Yeah,
for.
yeah. And it's going to help commerce. I mean, with having that added feature, having something beautiful to go through, people are going to want to walk through there and go from the east side to the west side and visit all the stores and shops over there. I have a question to you about the village is being sued now by what is the media company for the Outfront Media. Oh, I was so disappointed to read that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So I'm limited to what I can say on
I can
this
imagine,
because it is a
yeah.
Board of Adjustment issue.
Right.
Last year, Outfront came forward with a application for the Board of Adjustment to place a billboard on Route 17. After many, many hearing nights, many, many meetings with the Board of Adjustment, the plan was voted down.
Yes.
So within a certain amount of time, the applicant had the opportunity to file an appeal with the Superior Court, and on the last day, they made that filing.
Yeah, okay.
So we have some work to do from the Board of Adjustment side. Bruce Whitaker, who is our legal counsel on the Board of Adjustment, will help defend the Board of Adjustment's position on this. Being that the Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial board, I'm limited to what I can say as to the merits of the case.
Right.
But certainly, the Board of Adjustment attorney has an obligation in court to explain to the judge why the Board of Adjustment made the decision that they did, and the merits of why they justified that action.
Right.
So we'll see where it goes from here. It is a little disappointing because it was on the last day, so we didn't think we were going to see an appeal.
Yeah, and here you
But
go.
unfortunately, they do have the ability to appeal it through the judicial process.
Right. So for those of you who are watching and listening, I strongly encourage you to stay abreast of this issue because the proposed area is in a historic area. It's right next to the old Paramus Reformed Church. It's right next to the Schoolhouse Museum. It's right near the Value Cemetery. There are Revolutionary War soldiers that are buried there. I mean, the history of old Paramus Church is just phenomenal. George Washington mastermind part of his strategy in that building. Alexander Hamilton has walked those grounds. And I feel, as the vice president of the Historical Society, it would desecrate that area to have a digital billboard up there. Now, that's my opinion. It's very bright. I don't think it adds any value to our community whatsoever. If you agree with me, stay abreast of these. If you don't agree with me, just never you mind.
And I just want to say, the reason that Outfront had to go to the Board of Adjustment was because the zoning laws in Ridgewood prevent the use of a billboard.
Okay, so
they were applying to seek relief from the law.
I gotcha.
And seek a variance to be able to build the billboard. So all the Board of Adjustment did was to follow what the village council years ago enacted as law, which is
Thank
that a
God.
billboard was prevented on Route 17. So we'll see where this goes in the courts. Obviously, Bruce is going to be required to defend the board's position, and we'll see what the judge says.
Yeah, well, I hope it's successful. Again, there is another reason for people to get involved with the committees, boards, and commissions. We have the Board of Adjustments. We have the Citizen Safety Advisory Committee. We have the Central Business District Advisory Committee. We have Parks and Rec. We have Green Ridgewood. We have the Shade Tree Commission. Those are just a few that I can think of that are available for all of our residents to get involved in. And whether or not they want to serve on those boards and commissions and committees, just please show up. Let your voice be heard. One of the things, and maybe I'm off the beat here by bringing this up, but there's a lot going on at the federal level right now, and a lot of people are kind of maybe not so happy about that. And my typical response is, listen, if you cannot name the or the city council members that serve you, if you can't name your county representatives, your state representatives, and your federal Congress people, then you have no business complaining about what's happening at the presidential level, because this is where democracy dies, in our backyard. So we all, more than ever, everybody needs to jump in and become engaged. And it's so fun. Right. That's what I am so confused. I know people are really busy with their jobs and their kids and all of that, but being involved in local government is a blast. We have so much fun, don't we?
And I have to tell you this. I've worked in 3 other municipalities before coming to Ridgewood. The engagement here is like nothing
incredible.
I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's so true.
So, while it's always the more the merrier,
yeah.
right? The reality is that other municipalities have challenges in trying to recruit people to serve on these boards and commissions, to coach the baseball team.
Right.
They have challenges in trying to recruit people to volunteer. And listen, some of that's the lifestyle that we live now.
Completely
some of it's,
understand that,
people are working 2 jobs,
Yes.
Parents are both working, whatever it happens to be. And listen, I think post-COVID, that culture has changed too.
Yes.
People are just a little less engaged in wanting to do those things because we lost that year.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Ridgewood is far and away
We are.
an engaged community. People are active. They want to participate. Again, we go back to the file of people who are interested in serving on these boards and committees. Those files are pretty thick, and we're blessed in that respect.
Yeah, we really are. And again, like I said, it's fun to be involved. It's fun to learn about what's happening. To be kind of in the know of what's going on. You feel like you're kind of on the inside. You know what I mean? So there are some other things, some really fun things that are coming up for you. I think you're probably already in the process of planning all of the events that are coming up for the spring and summer. What are you working on?
We're working on Earth Day and the Daffodil Festival coming up in April. Looking forward to working with Nancy Bigos over at Parks and Recreation and her team.
Yeah.
They kill it each year over there.
Gosh.
Last year was very cold, but hopefully the weather's on our side this year. And then we've already kicked off meetings for the Memorial Day run. As a matter of fact, we had a meeting this morning.
Oh, really?
On Memorial Day.
That's it's a huge. Oh my gosh! Well,
takes
'cause I
over the
live
whole
right
town.
There. Yeah, I live right there, so we can. That's what we wake up to. The
Absolutely.
bullhorn.
And we're 2 meetings in on the 4th of July.
Already.
Between
Wow.
the parade and the fireworks and all the festivities that happen that day. So we're well into planning for the spring and the summer. Looking forward to that. We're also going back to the Veterans Field Lighting Project. We're looking to have a inauguration game under the lights.
Fun.
So we're talking to Keith Cook, our athletic director over at the high school,
Good.
and Scott
Yep.
Muller, the head of RBSA. So we're planning an event around that too. We're not short on activities and events in Ridgewood, that's for sure.
No, there's always something fun to do, and I would imagine that the concerts at the Shell are gearing up too.
Yep.
And are there going to be concerts in the park again this year?
We're looking for live bands to perform on Saturday nights.
Why am I asking
right
that
across
question?
the
Of
street
course I know
in Van Ness
that.
Square.
Yes.
Pam Perrin, our deputy mayor, has taken the lead again on that, and we're looking forward to an active summer in Ridgewood.
It's going to be great. So, is there anything else that you want to share with us on this episode?
Well, let me get deep on Schedler.
Okay, let's go.
And listen, my approach on this has been to be as communicative and as informative as possible.
Truly, and I admire you for that.
The trouble with that is that we don't have all the facts yet.
Right.
And as I think most folks know, we were served with a letter back in December of 2023 from the Department of Environmental Protection that required the village to undertake soil samples at the Schedler site.
Can I pause there for a second and
Sure.
find out, what do you think precipitated that letter?
I think there's a lot of concern surrounding that property.
Was it the neighbors that might have done it? Or
I think there were communications between Ridgewood residents who had concerns and the DEP,
okay.
and that caused the DEP to investigate
thank
what
God, yep.
happened. And listen, at the end of the day, we're here to comply with DEP
That's
standards.
right.
That
Yep.
they are the agency that regulates this type of environmental
Right,
concern.
right.
And we are going to follow all of their standards, rules,
Right.
and regulations. So we retained a company called Matrix New World Consulting. They have been doing our soil testing at the location. They initially tested the berm, which was built in
Yeah.
2018, 2019 under prior administration,
Right.
which was designed to become a buffer
Yeah.
between Route 17 and whatever was to be built on the Schedler property. So the berm was initially tested. We do have soils that exceed the groundwater contamination standards, not by huge amounts, but by enough that they.
Does it mean that the plantings have to be removed then?
It's likely that we're going to have to excavate a considerable amount of soil from there, and we're
But can the
planning
trees
to
stay?
do that. To the extent that we can find the trees a new home, that's going to be our goal and objective.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about what the buffer would be in replacement
Right.
of the berm.
Right.
We're now on to testing some of the flat area in the park outside of the area of the house, but we're in the process of doing that now. Matrix is finalizing their last bit of testing, and we anticipate that they'll have a report before the mayor and council at some point in the month of March.
Okay,
so we're
it's
looking
coming up.
forward to that. And then at that point, once we have all the facts, and again, I can't impress upon folks enough, I don't like to speculate.
No. What's the point?
I like to have an informed decision-making process.
Absolutely.
And that's why we're working with Matrix. They're going to come back. They're going to make recommendations to the village council. And then we're going to plan around that for how that site is going to be considered in the future, whether we go back and revisit the SHPO application
Yeah.
to make a determination as to what adjustments might need to be made to the plan based on the soil piece.
Right.
But again, we've been transparent about this.
Oh,
All of the
totally,
information that has come to us from the DEP or from Matrix, one report was 7,000 pages, all posted to the village website.
Yes.
We have had a public outreach plan that
Mm-hmm.
was submitted to the state. It was approved by the state. Part of that is that we're responsible for responding to resident questions, or actually the public at large's
Right, right.
questions. We've had now 3 rounds of questions. I want to say we're probably close to 250 questions submitted,
Wow.
only by about 7 or 8 people. But
Interesting.
we have a number of questions that have been asked and they've been answered.
Yeah.
And we're working on round 3 of those questions,
Okay.
which we're hopeful to have out right in conjunction with Matrix coming back and providing their report to the village council.
And I have to apologize because this Schedler property has had its issues since day one. And so I'm engaged in it, and then sometimes I pull back because I'm just like, oh gosh, I don't know. So I'm going to be honest, I've sort of lost track. Is there any possibility of moving the house in?
So the concept of moving the house was first discussed the day I arrived. I think it was my first council meeting, maybe second. And that's off the table at this point.
Because it's just too expensive.
But I will tell you, when it comes to the house, we have a renovated house.
I know.
The-
By how much
about
millions?
$2.6 million
Okay, and-
worth of renovation that was
Okay.
made there. And we need to find a
tenant.
We need to find someone who's going to have a useful purpose
Gosh,
for
yes.
the house. And to Councilmember Winograd's credit, she has been out there,
Bless her heart.
beating the drum,
Yeah.
trying to find the right
Somebody.
tenant for that house. We've
be,
talked to the
yeah.
Bergen County Historical Society. They needed exclusive use. Part of the intent under prior administration with the renovation to the house was to have it used for community gatherings, for
But
meetings.
It's too small, though, isn't it?
The occupancy is 49 people. So there are small meetings, small events that you could have in
But
that
not-
location.
but-
But you're not likely
You
not
can't
having a
have
wedding.
49 people in one room. You can have like
Spread out throughout the house.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So we're looking for we have a house, we have an asset,
Okay.
and we're looking for the proper use. And if anyone, again, going back to people submitting suggestions, having ideas, we want you to share those with us. And I would encourage people, if they have a thought about a great use for that house, to drop an email to myself, to drop an email to Siobhan, who, again, has been the leader on this
Right.
amongst the village council members. And we'll have those conversations, and we'll vet those ideas out. Newcomers had expressed some interest in addition to
might
the
be
Bergen
fun,
County
yeah.
Historical Society. They need a small place for gatherings and
Yeah.
things of that nature. So we're working through that. And then from there, we have to start talking about the SHPO application and how that's going to proceed moving
Right.
forward. We do have some donated furniture, so we're going to start
good.
to furnish the house right
Okay.
now at no cost.
Oh, that's good.
But we do need to have it functional if we're going to
Right.
have
Well-
folks from the community in that space.
Yeah. And I would, it's just a complicated situation. So as long as we're there and talking about complicated situations, let's talk about turf.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So obviously, last year's council voted to approve the application to the State Historic Preservation Office, which included turf. The vote at the time was 3 to 2.
3 to 2. Yep.
3 to 2. I
And
think,
since then, we've got a new administration, so we
right,
don't
so
know.
we have a new council member,
Yeah.
and again, we're gonna need to revisit this as a council. I don't want to speak for how people will vote in
Right.
the future,
Right.
but as it stands today, the application before SHPO includes the turf field. I say all the time, I am a policy implementer.
Right.
I am not a policy maker.
Right.
So if the majority of the village council wants to move forward with an application with turf, that's what we're going to do.
You got to do.
If the majority of the village council was moving forward with an application that included natural grass, we would proceed in that way. So we're still working through some of those issues. I will tell you that I think that the council has taken a balanced, collective approach to talking to field turf vendors. The one council member who is opposed to field turf, Deputy Mayor Perrin, has been in the meetings with council members who support turf so that everybody's gathering the same information and, again, trying to make an informed decision. May not change folks' mind,
Right.
but we
But at
want to
least they have the
gather as
same
much
info.
information and we want to share the same information
Makes sense.
with one another. So we're working through that. And listen, it can't be ignored
No.
that folks in town do have concerns
Absolutely.
about field turf.
And it's well water over there too, isn't it?
There are 4 private properties adjacent to the Schedler neighborhood.
Right.
We have had some conversations with them about the possibility of hooking up
Hooking
to
them up to
Ridgewood
Ridgewood
Water.
Water.
By the end of 2026, Ridgewood Water will be PFAS-free.
Isn't
once
that
all the-
remarkable? Like, we are the leaders in that, right?
We are, and I think that's lost on people.
Yeah, that is something to emphasize.
First
Go
of all,
ahead.
I will tell you this, and I say it all the time. New parks, new amenities in parks, freshly paved roads. These are exciting things. right?
Totally.
I mean,
The stuff we can see.
for as sexy as municipal government gets, new roads and
Yeah.
new parks are exciting things. Water and sewer,
Not so much.
not so exciting because people don't see it.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Ridgewood Water, I mean, I just can't shout out Rich Calby and his team
Oh,
at
my
Ridgewood
God,
Water
yes.
enough. We are under a consent order, and long before the prior administration in Washington made it mandatory that PFAS be treated by 2029, we were under a consent order to have it done in 2026.
Right.
And $150 million of investment that started under prior administration and is being carried out by this administration. We will consolidate all of our wells and build 12 treatment facilities throughout the Ridgewood
remarkable,
Water
yeah.
surface area. And if you've actually seen the videos, and we've put them out on social media, because again, it's important for
Yeah.
people to see how in this case, their water rates are affected,
Right.
but also what they're paying
Right.
for. These enormous tanks that treat
Oh my God, yes, they're
for
huge.
PFAS.
Yes.
And you can see smaller ones as you drive down 208 in Hawthorne and places like that. But these are incredibly sized. They're being built. They're actually being housed in a space that is going to protect them, so we get a longer lifespan
Nice.
for
Good,
these
good.
for these tanks. And again, this is This is the incredible work that Rich Calby and his
Right.
team at Ridgewood Water have done in designing this so that this $150 million investment has the longest lifespan that it possibly can, so that we can continue to have clean and PFAS-free drinking water moving forward.
And for the people who are not familiar with the PFAS phrase, it basically means forever chemicals. And those chemicals come from Teflon coated pans. They come from athletic wear, the wicking wear. Well, actually, all of our apparel really causes that's probably the most damaging thing to
Pizza
our
boxes.
like
Right?
everything. It's just crazy. So those chemicals and plastics get into our water supply, and that is what causes the PFAS percentages to rise. And so, again, everyone has been mandated to remove them, and Ridgewood is far and above any municipality in the country, I believe.
Yeah, and quite frankly, the only ones who are ahead of us are the smaller municipalities who have smaller water utilities. Here, we serve 60,000 people
Right.
across 4 communities.
Right.
And we have had to negotiate agreements with other municipalities in order to build on leased properties, retrofitting tanks. I mean, there's a lot to this project. But again, by the end of 2026, we will have PFAS down to undetectable levels.
It's amazing.
And I do want to thank our federal and our state partners as well. You know, Congressman Gottheimer was able to secure $2 million for the treatment facility that's being built over on Goffel Road near the Hawthorne-Wyckoff border. And that is just going to offset what the ratepayers will have to pay for this project. We currently have a request from the mayor of Glen Rock before the Budget Appropriations Committee in the Assembly requesting for a budget offset to help support one of the facilities that are being built in Glen Rock. And then we are also in litigation with some of these manufacturers of PFAS products that
Interesting.
contaminated our water.
I didn't know that.
And this is a national lawsuit.
Yeah.
It's being heard down in Carolina.
Wow.
We have special legal counsel that's representing other water utilities throughout the country.
So what are some of the companies and what are the products?
3M,
Okay.
DuPont.
Yeah.
You know, so we're working through some of these things.
The old
and-
school guys that were dumping stuff in rivers back in the
Exactly.
beginning.
And whatever we reap from a potential settlement or a potential victory in that lawsuit is going to go right to paying off the debt service so that it
Very
does
good.
not bear on the backs of the ratepayers throughout the
Right,
4
right.
towns, but that we can offset some of these costs with a legal settlement.
So on that, I would like to remind our viewers and our listeners that I interviewed Pam Perrin, a year and a half ago, and the title of the episode was called, Is Ridgewood Water Safe to Drink? So I would highly recommend that all of our listeners and viewers listen to that. Go back on the archives on Apple iTunes or go to our website, ridgewoodtalks.com, and you can listen to that. And as I was saying, comparing bottled water to Ridgewood water was the safest to drink of all the bottled water that they tested. So I thought that was really
Incredible.
interesting, and it gave me a lot of comfort. I mean, I know that there are times when they flush the piping or whatever they call it, flush the what do they call that when they flush the hydrants or whatever, and sometimes that can kind of affect the taste or the quality of our water, and then we have to boil it. That's commonplace all across the world, so that's not anything to be alarmed about for people who are concerned.
And we did have a boil water notice last year, primarily,
I remember that,
primarily in Midland Park, but there were areas of Wyckoff and Ridgewood that were affected too. And again, we tackled that issue after we identified the problem. We have a distribution issue as you go up Glen Avenue.
Right.
Getting the water to the tank up there on the Midland Park side, and Rich Calby and his team, working with an engineering firm, they've developed a solution to that problem. We're going to be putting a pump station to be able to get the water more effectively up
Good.
into the intermediate zone. It's going to go right by the art building, actually, on Glen Ave.
Right.
And we're working on that, and we anticipate that project will be up and running by spring. So as people start to water their lawns again and fill their pools and water usage starts to increase as the weather starts to get
Right.
warmer, we'll be in a better position so that we don't have to have that boil water advisory notice go out in the future.
There was a silver lining to that situation too, if I recall.
The communications piece.
Correct.
Right.
Why don't you share a little bit about that?
What we identified when we put that, it was a Saturday morning. I was actually at my daughter's softball game up in New York State, and I got the call from Rich Calby, and he explained to me the problem. and we put out a reverse 911. And we have that system set up for emergencies, both on the Office of Emergency Management side and also on the Ridgewood Water side. And what I quickly realized, the power of social media, was that not as many people had their contact information in our reverse 911 system as I would have anticipated. So what we did was we identified that we were not effectively communicating with people, and we had to fix it. So we culled information across village departments. So if your child was signed up for a program at the rec department with the rec department at the community center, or if you had a building permit that was taken out to put an addition on your house, or any other mean that you would have to share your contact information with a village department, we culled as much of that information as we possibly could. We came up with 3,400 or 3,500 new contacts.
Unbelievable.
And we were able to upload that into our reverse 911 system. And in fact, we were able to expand it. So if you get a reverse 911 now, you're also going to get a text message, and you're going to get an email if we have that information as well. So we've now enlarged the communication strategy so that we can hit more people, speak to more people, especially when we have an emergency situation on our hands.
I mean, and we never know what those emergencies can be. It can be a weather emergency, and who knows, it could be a terrorist, because, I mean, we have to talk about that. We're real close to New York City, so it's very important that all the residents get signed up for that reverse 911.
Sure. And again, I mean, one of our biggest concerns, and I dealt with 3 floods in my first 6 months here, right?
Yeah.
So, we have a flooding issue. We know that. We've engaged the Army Corps for some long-term solutions, but I'll go out on a limb here and say we're going to have another flood before we have a solution.
For sure.
And we need to be able to communicate with folks, especially in the low-lying areas along the Hohokus Brook and the Saddle River, to give them an alert and let them know that they need to prepare, that their properties may be affected.
Yeah, and we talked about this on one of the other interviews that we had. Gottheimer was really instrumental in getting the Army Corps of Engineers to come out and take a look at that. So do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I came from Woodland Park. Woodland Park, Little Falls was affected going back to 1999 during Hurricane Floyd, when we actually lost a man in his basement. He drowned. He couldn't get out in time during Floyd. And at that point, then Congressman Bill Pascrell engaged, but with both communities, to try to come up with a solution for the flooding along the Peckman River. The Army Corps did extensive studies in that space, and just within the last few years, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill has been able to secure $150 million to be able to build a flood diversion tunnel, which was designed by the Army Corps.
Yeah.
So while that seems like a long period of time, and it is from 1999 to 2023, 2024. The Army Corps is instrumental in these regional solutions to flooding. This is not something that the village manager or the village council or the village engineering department in the village can solve. We just don't have the ability to do that.
But
we need federal and state resources to make this happen, and it starts with the Army Corps of Engineers. So we've been engaged with them. Again, through the efforts of Congressman Gottheimer, he brought them to the table. We've had a lot of dialogue. We're also part of the Water Act that was approved last December, signed by the prior administration in Washington, D.C., again, through the efforts of Congressman Gottheimer. And we're now authorized to be studied, which is an act of Congress. We joke about that term, but it actually took an act of Congress to put Ridgewood on the map when it comes to flood mitigation. So that process will start probably in the spring. There's a little uncertainty down at the Army Corps of the scope, so we're working through some of that with the change of administration in Washington. But I anticipate that by spring we'll have hit the ground running, and we'll be able to talk about what the study is going to look like. And then they'll come back with recommendations as to some mitigation efforts that we might be able to undertake here in Ridgewood.
And if I understand it correctly, trying to mitigate it here in Ridgewood, if we did our part to fix the flooding in Ridgewood, that affects downstream.
Which is exactly why we can't solve it locally.
You can't
because
do that.
we can't do something that's going to affect
because
Glen
it's going
Rock
to adversely
or
affect every community downstream. Well, we might not flood, and so we have to figure it out.
And listen, we don't really have a diversion option. referred earlier to the Peckman River in Little
Right,
Falls and
right,
Woodland
right.
Park. They're able to divert that water from the Peckman River into the Passaic River through a flood tunnel so that it doesn't become
Yeah,
a
where
problem
we-
downstream on the Peckman. We don't have that ability
right.
here. So really here, I think it comes down to diversion. And again, I'm not an engineer. I don't work for the Army Corps
But
of
you've
Engineers.
learned enough about
But
it
I've
now.
been through
Yeah.
this. I've been to this rodeo a few times.
Yeah.
And I do think that we're going to need to look at areas where we can retain water
Right.
along the river and the brook in order to try to mitigate some of this. But again, this is all for further discussion once we
Right.
hit the ground running with the Army Corps.
We'll touch on that the next time you come and visit us.
Sure thing.
I'm
Glad
so
to.
excited that really I got to thank you. It really means a lot to us that you come every month to talk to us, and I think our listeners and viewers really appreciate it too. So thanks so much.
Next time I come, I might bring a department director with me.
Oh, do that. Yeah.
I think
I think that would be fun to have our residents get to know some of our department directors.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, we have a great team at Village Hall, and I'm sure they'd be glad to share some of the ideas
Yeah.
and thoughts they have
Yeah.
about what's happening in their departments.
Yeah, some of them are super fun to hang out with. So again, thank you so much, Keith.
My pleasure.
And I just want to tell everyone, I am Jeanne Johnson here with Ridgewood Talks, and I would love for you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and I want you to subscribe to the podcast on all the major platforms. It is now on video on YouTube and Spotify. And don't forget, these episodes are produced by Ignite Creator Studios right here in Ridgewood. They do video podcasting and content strategy for businesses and services. And again, they're right here in town. So come and visit us here at, we're on Dayton Street. It's 202. No, it's not. It's 141 Dayton Street, Suite 202. Come on up here. I'm Jeanne Johnson for Ridgewood Talks. Thanks again for our guests, and I'm going to thank you in advance for sharing this show with all your friends and neighbors. Have a good day. See ya.